We're not fully human at work, and this is a problem. Put simply, the way we're working isn't working. Education gets us ready for not being alive 9 to 5 by failing to engage the better part of us. We're taught from school to leave our bodies, values and emotions at home when we go out the door in the morning. We talk about work and life as we intuitively know that the way we're working at the moment, we're not fully alive. The challenge is not work-life balance, but getting work back into balance by insisting on being fully human even on weekdays. Instead of having a bring your kids to work day, I would love a world where we can bring ourselves to work every day. I'm from a family of educators, both parents, uncles and aunts, 2 grandparents were teachers of one kind or another. I always said I wouldn't be a teacher, so I failed in that regard. I also failed in the sense of being a conventional teacher. I grew up singing Irish rebel songs, which are all about sex, drinking and fighting, and it's perhaps no coincidence that I still think that obedience is a kind of death. Obedience is the opposite of curiosity, and curiosity is how we learn. The surest way not to learn is to blindly do what you're told. I've also since learned from the martial arts that consenting surrender is important too, and I'm still learning that one. Gifted academically, but hated school because it involved sitting still, wearing a uniform, and doing everything that you're told. Luckily, Ritalin hadn't been invented yet, and physically abusing children had been outlawed, but school still felt like a 15-year struggle for the best parts of myself to survive. I still think I bought into the central mistake of Western education though, which is that book learning was what matters. I was good in school and had very little experience of failure until I was about 17, and 2 things happened. The first is that I failed my driving test, and the second is that I fell in love and got my heart broken. I lived in rural East Anglia, and driving actually was really important for your freedom as a young person because things were so spread out. So I took my test as soon as I could, had some lessons, and I failed miserably. I actually failed miserably 3 times, and I couldn't understand this because all the other kids, including the ones who were in school, weren't supposedly very bright, were passing. So I thought, what's going on here? And I realised there was a heck of a lot more to learning than book learning, and skills learning was an entirely different thing. Now love. Her name was Sally. She was an artist, long dark hair and a shy smile. Love took my brain out and kicked it around like a slum kid's football. Love laughed at my theories and took me dancing into sweet insanity. Love blew me right open, burnt me right down, plucked my innards like a guitar solo and licked my spine. I realised that the body, the heart and the soul has more to teach us about being human than any book, and all my education had completely missed the point. After a messy, ugly heartbreak, I threw myself into poetry and the martial arts. I was at university supposed to be doing psychology, but I found the martial arts really had more to teach about being human and the body-mind link, which seemed to be critical. After escaping the corpse of university with a barely earned degree, I ended up working first with children and then in areas of conflict. I really like intensity, and I claim we've all really lived at some point. You might not have known Sally or Aikido or the West Bank, but you certainly would have had peak experiences with children or in sports or in nature, with your partner. We've all had those times when we've felt really alive. There's lots of ways of kissing the navel of the divine and feeling fully human. So what went wrong with work? Well, we spend all day there as adults, after all, half our waking lives. I think it all started Industrial Revolution and culminating in the factories of people like Ford, where people were encouraged to turn themselves into cogs in a machine. So rather than being alive, dancing, fully creative human beings, in order to force themselves into the clock and deal with the harsh conditions and do what they're told, people were really encouraged to think of themselves as cogs. The cost of being a machine, however, is not feeling. The problem is when we don't feel ourselves, we don't feel other people, so we lose our sense of compassion. Compassion is a felt resonance with someone else. So when we're all day long practicing not feeling ourselves, we're losing that sense of empathy for others. So numbing is not selective. If, for example, you drink to deal with a difficult job or to numb your unhappiness, you're also numbing your ability to feel happy. Trust me on that one. An emotionally repressed workplace, and sadly that's most of them today, is essentially a general anaesthetic. As history went on, people actually gave their permission for this and ended up wanting things they don't need. This is encouraged through advertising, and if you're encouraging someone not to feel all day long, it's very easy to get them separated from their real human needs and to replace those with more consumerist ones. I once spoke to a prostitute in Holland, and she told me, I sell my body to cover it with nice clothes. I sell my body to cover it with nice clothes. And for me, that really sums it up. This may seem crazy, but is selling your time to buy distractions for how you sell that time any saner? Is the addictive cycle of ever-increasing stimulation to feel again after numbing oneself all day long, is that any wiser? I believe passionately, however, there's another option, thank God. This is really important for anyone in business. I'm a businessman myself, also for anyone who works, and definitely for anyone in any form of leadership. So why is this other option important? Well, first of all, the health consequences. The health consequences of stress and stress-related illness are the leading causes of death in the Western world. This stuff I'm talking about is literally killing us. We removed physically dangerous Victorian factory conditions a long time ago. However, the psychologically dangerous conditions we're now living in, these are statistically much, much more lethal than any Victorian factory ever was. I get calls from workplaces all the time after there's been a suicide or a heart attack. I get brought in to do a stress workshop very often after that happens. Social scientists tell us that depression, anxiety, addiction, anger problems, these things are all on the rise, and happiness, despite wealth going up slightly, happiness is actually going down by any measure at all. And I'd say a large part of that is how we spend half our waking time. Financially, human resources studies tell us that stress-related illness in the UK costs £1,035 per person per annum. And that's just the sick days. That doesn't account for losses of productivity to stress or the cost of staff churn, re-employing new people. The way we're working isn't working. Aside from this sort of death and misery argument, another argument is the work that's needed now requires people to be more than cogs in the machine. In a kind of fast-moving, creative information age, people need to be much more spontaneous, much more adaptable. And that requires being fully alive again. So what I'm suggesting of being fully alive at work actually makes people more competitive, actually makes people better employees. The way we're working won't work anymore. A third thing here is that if we're practicing not being fully alive all day at work, then that's really going to damage our relationships when we get home. I believe that a lot of people's relationships are really screwed up, that's a technical term, by how they are all day at work. I see so many divorces amongst the people that I work with. 50% divorce rate now, at least in the UK and the US. So, the numbers don't lie there. The way we're working is working us apart. Even if you're not in paid employment, we all have a vested interest in a world where work is set up by psychopaths and madmen. People are willing to die for a more equitable system of government. I mean, that's sadly happening right now in certain countries in the Middle East. And yet we put up with a completely undemocratic, unequitable system 9 to 5. We accept at work what we would never accept in life if we see it separate. Dictatorship, threats, inhumanity, it goes on. It's time we lived at work, as the way we're working isn't bloody working. All this work talk can be a bit heavy, so I think it's worth noting that business needn't be a serious business. Nothing meaningful is serious, in fact, I'd say. And if you want to do anything really well, then definitely don't be serious about it. That includes work. I like the saying, take what you do seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. Only a comedian can really tell the truth, and my Zen master says that humour is built into the very fabric of things. It's all a joke and it's deadly serious. The jester's the only one alive at the end of the Shakespeare tragedy. The fool is wise, and it's wise to learn to play at work. Play is the basic way we learn, and it's also the basic way we connect. So if those things are important for your job, and I'd say that all jobs involve learning and connecting with other people, then play needs to be a part of that. I work in business, but I've always admired artists, mystics, revolutionaries, poets. I think it's time we brought those two worlds together. I would love to see a world where we bring in the heart, the body, the emotions and spirit back into the workplace. Let's make work work and give people permission to be fully human again.